My name is Lyra Bennett, and the day I received my college rejection letter is the day something inside me died, and something far more powerful was born. The envelope sat on our kitchen table like a guillotine waiting to fall. My hands trembled as I tore it open, my heart hammering against my ribs with such violence, I thought it might burst. I had worked tirelessly through 4 years of high school. Sleepless nights hunched over textbooks until my eyes burned. Perfect grades that came at the cost of every social event. Every moment of teenage freedom sacrificed on the altar of ambition. I wanted one thing. Just one single thing in this cruel world. A scholarship to Harrington University. It was not just my dream. It was my only lifeline, the only way someone like me could afford to study law and chase the burning desire that consumed my every waking moment. Becoming an attorney who could fight for people who had no voice. But when the acceptance letters were announced that gray April morning, I was not just disappointed. I was obliterated. Crushed beneath the weight of a system that I finally understood was rigged from the very beginning. The scholarship I had worked for, the one I deserved with every fiber of my being, the one I had earned through blood, sweat, and tears, went to someone else. Kiana Blackwell. Kiana Blackwell. Even saying her name now, years later, still tastes like poison on my tongue. She was the daughter of wealthy parents. The kind of girl who drove to school in a brand new BMW while I walked 3 miles in the pouring rain, my shoes developing holes that I covered with duct tape. She was the golden child who never had to choose between buying lunch and buying school supplies, who never had to work weekends at the local diner just to help my mother pay rent on our cramped apartment. Everyone whispered the truth behind cupped hands and knowing glances. Kiana had connections. Her father was a major donor to the university, writing checks that could probably fund entire departments. My application, with its perfect GPA, its exhaustive list of volunteer hours, its passionate essay about using law to protect the vulnerable, never stood a chance against cold, hard money. The day the announcement was made still haunts my nightmares. I can still see every detail with crystal clarity. The way the sunlight streamed through the tall windows of our school hallway, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out like grasping fingers. The way my classmates murmured among themselves, shooting me pitying looks when they thought I was not watching. And I can still see Kiana's face. That smirk. That cruel, satisfied smirk that told me everything I needed to know about how the world really worked. "Do not take it too hard, Lyra," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy that made my stomach churn. "Not everyone is meant for greatness." Those words seared into my soul like a red-hot brand. They burned through every layer of hope I had carefully built up over 4 years of relentless effort. In that moment, standing in that hallway surrounded by the whispers and stares of my classmates, something fundamental shifted inside me. I felt the girl I had been. The girl who believed that hard work and determination were enough. The girl who trusted that merit would triumph over money, crumble into dust. And from those ashes, something darker and more determined began to rise. That was the moment I swore an oath to myself, a promise written in the deepest chambers of my heart. I would not just rise above my circumstances. I would rise above her. The weeks that followed were the darkest of my young life. While Kiana celebrated her victory with expensive dinners and shopping trips to prepare for her glorious future at Harrington, I sat in my bedroom staring at rejection letters from schools I could never afford anyway. The weight of my shattered dreams pressed down on me like a physical force, making it hard to breathe, hard to think, hard to imagine any future worth living. But somewhere in that darkness, a flame began to flicker. Small at first, barely more than an ember, but growing stronger with each passing day. It was fed by rage, yes, but also by something far more powerful. An unshakable determination to prove that Kiana Blackwell was wrong about me. Dead wrong. I could not afford Harrington University, so I enrolled at Riverside Community College, a small, unremarkable school where the classrooms smelled like industrial disinfectant, and the parking lot was full of rusted cars held together with prayers and determination. It was nothing like the ivy-covered halls and manicured lawns of Harrington, but it was mine. I had earned my place there through actual merit, not family connections. Those were the hardest years of my life. I worked 3 part-time jobs just to survive. Mornings at a coffee shop that opened before dawn, afternoons tutoring struggling high school students, Nights cleaning office buildings when the rest of the world was safely tucked in their beds. I lived on instant ramen and peanut butter sandwiches, wore the same 5 outfits in rotation, and turned down every social invitation because I simply could not afford the luxury of a social life. Every night, I collapsed into bed with aching feet and burning eyes, my body screaming for rest but my mind still racing with the material I needed to master for the next day's classes. I studied in bathroom stalls during breaks, memorized legal concepts while scrubbing floors, turned every spare moment into an opportunity to inch closer to my goals. My classmates at Riverside thought I was obsessed. They could not understand why I pushed myself so relentlessly, why I treated every assignment like a matter of life and death, why I seemed to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. They had no idea about the fire that burned inside me, the image of Kiana's smirking face that drove me forward even when my body begged me to quit. I graduated summa cum laude, my GPA a perfect 4.0 that I had earned through sheer force of will. But even that victory felt hollow, because I knew it was just the beginning. The real test was still ahead of me. Law school was a different kind of hell altogether. I had managed to secure a scholarship to Preston Law, not as prestigious as Harrington, but respected enough to give me a fighting chance in the legal world. While my classmates bonded over expensive dinners and weekend trips, I worked as a research assistant, a teaching aide, anything that would help cover my living expenses and keep me afloat. I remember the first time I saw Kiana during my second year of law school. She was at a networking event for Harrington alumni, laughing loudly with a group of perfectly dressed young professionals. She looked exactly the same, polished, confident, entitled to every good thing that had ever come her way. She spotted me across the room and her smile faltered for just a moment. Then she composed herself and walked over, her high heels clicking against the marble floor like bullets. "Lyra Bennett," she said, her voice carrying that same condescending tone I remembered so well. "I heard you ended up at Preston. That is nice." The word nice dripped from her lips like acid. She looked me up and down, taking in my second-hand dress and worn shoes, and I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. To her, I was exactly where she expected me to be. Struggling in her shadow, always a step behind, never quite good enough to run in her circle. "Yes," I replied quietly, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "It is serving me well." She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "I am sure it is. Well, I should get back to my friends. We are discussing summer internships at some of the top firms in the city. You understand." I understood perfectly. She was rubbing my face in the opportunities that would always be available to her, and always be just out of reach for someone like me. She was reminding me of my place in the natural order of things. But what Kiana did not understand was that every cruel word, every dismissive glance, every reminder of the distance between us only fed the fire inside me. She thought she was putting me in my place, but she was actually forging me into something stronger, something more determined, something absolutely relentless. I threw myself into my studies with renewed fury. While my classmates slept, I researched. While they partied, I practiced mock trials until my voice was hoarse. While they networked at expensive bars, I volunteered at legal aid clinics, gaining real experience with real clients who faced real problems. I graduated at the top of my class. Not second. Not third. First. The valedictorian of Preston Law School, with job offers from firms that had never heard of Lyra Bennett 3 years earlier, but now knew exactly who I was and what I was capable of. But I had my sights set on something specific. Morrison, Hayes & Associates, the most prestigious law firm in the city, the kind of place where careers were made and legends were born. It was exactly the kind of firm that Kiana expected to walk into based on her name and connections alone. The irony was almost too perfect. I spent months preparing for my interview with Morrison, Hayes & Associates. I researched every case they had handled in the past 5 years, memorized the backgrounds of every partner, studied their client list until I knew their business better than some of their own employees. I was not just going to be prepared. I was going to be the most prepared candidate they had ever seen. The day of my interview arrived like the culmination of a years-long storm. I stood outside the gleaming glass tower that housed Morrison, Hayes & Associates, wearing my best suit, still second-hand, but pressed and tailored to perfection. and took a deep breath that tasted like victory and vindication. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt like ascending to heaven itself. The doors opened to reveal a reception area that looked like something from a magazine. Marble floors, leather furniture, oil paintings that probably cost more than I had earned in my entire life. This was the world I had been fighting to enter, the world that people like Kiana took for granted. But as I walked toward the reception desk, my heart nearly stopped beating. Sitting in one of those expensive leather chairs, flipping through a legal magazine with the casual confidence of someone who belonged there, was Kiana Blackwell. She looked different now, more polished, more sophisticated, her hair styled in a way that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. But her eyes held the same entitled gleam, the same assumption that the world owed her everything she wanted. When she saw me, her magazine slipped from her fingers like a stone dropping into still water. For a moment, just a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Confusion, maybe. Or the first faint stirring of something that might have been fear. "Lyra," she said, her voice higher than usual. "What are you doing here?" The question was so absurd, so perfectly revealing of how little she understood about the world outside her bubble of privilege, that I almost laughed. What did she think I was doing there? Delivering coffee? Cleaning the windows? "I have an interview," I said simply, walking past her to the reception desk. I could feel her staring at me as I gave my name to the receptionist, as I was handed a visitor's badge, as I was directed to wait in the same area where she sat. The silence between us stretched like a taut wire, humming with years of unspoken tension. "For what position?" she finally asked, and there was something sharp in her voice now, something that sounded almost like panic. I turned to look at her directly, meeting her gaze with the steady confidence I had spent years building. "Senior Associate. Litigation Department." The color drained from her face like water from a broken dam, because that was the same position she was interviewing for. The job she had assumed was already hers, based on her Harrington degree and her father's connections and her unshakable belief that the universe would always arrange itself for her convenience. We sat in that marble and leather waiting room like two gladiators preparing for battle. But while she fidgeted with her jewelry and checked her reflection in her phone screen, I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap, my breathing controlled and even. I had been preparing for this moment for years. Every late night, every sacrifice, every humiliation had led to this chair, this building, this chance to prove that merit could triumph over money. They called my name first. The interview was conducted by 3 partners. Morrison himself, a silver-haired man with eyes like steel. Hayes, a sharp-featured woman who looked like she could dissect a legal argument with surgical precision. And Patterson, the youngest partner, who had earned his place through the same kind of relentless determination that had brought me to this room. I had expected them to be intimidating, and they were. But I had also expected to be nervous, and I was not. Every question they asked, I answered with the confidence of someone who had earned the right to be there. When they asked about my experience, I told them about the pro bono cases I had handled, the real people I had helped, the victories I had won not through connections, but through preparation and skill. When they asked about my goals, I looked Morrison directly in the eye and said, "I want to be the kind of lawyer who wins cases not because of who I know, but because of how hard I work and how much I care about justice." I saw something change in their expressions then. A recognition maybe. Or respect. These were people who had clawed their way to the top of their profession, and they recognized a kindred spirit when they saw one. The interview lasted 2 hours. When it was over, Morrison walked me to the door personally, something the receptionist later told me he never did for candidates. "Ms. Bennett," he said, shaking my hand with both of his. "It has been a genuine pleasure. We will be in touch very soon." As I walked past the waiting area, I saw Kiana still sitting there, but she looked different now. Smaller somehow. The confident mask she wore so easily had slipped, revealing something raw and desperate underneath. She was scrolling through her phone frantically, probably texting her father or calling in favors, or doing whatever people like her did when they suddenly realized their safety net might have holes in it. She looked up as I passed, and for the first time in all the years I had known her, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. "How did it go?" she asked, and her voice was barely above a whisper. I paused, considering my words carefully. I could have been cruel. I could have gloated or made some cutting remark about how the real world worked differently than high school. But instead, I simply smiled. A smile that held years of struggle and determination and quiet triumph. It went well, I said. Good luck with yours. The call came the next day. I was sitting in my tiny apartment, eating leftover takeout and reviewing case files for my current job, when my phone rang. The number belonged to Morrison, Hayes and Associates. Ms. Bennett, came the voice of their hiring manager. Mr. Morrison would like to speak with you. Are you available to take his call? My heart hammered against my ribs as I waited for the connection. When Morrison's voice came through the speaker, it was warm with satisfaction. Lyra, he said, and the use of my first name felt like an embrace. I am calling with good news. We would like to offer you the position of senior associate in our litigation department. The salary and benefits package are being prepared as we speak, but I wanted to call you personally to tell you that you impressed the hell out of all of us yesterday. I closed my eyes and felt tears of pure relief and vindication streaming down my cheeks. Years of struggle, years of sacrifice, years of proving myself over and over again had led to this moment. Thank you. I managed to say through the emotion clogging my throat. I accept. Outstanding, Morrison replied, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Welcome to Morrison, Hayes and Associates, Lyra. I have a feeling you are going to do great things here. After I hung up the phone, I sat in my small apartment and let the magnitude of what had just happened wash over me. I had done it. Against all odds, despite every obstacle that had been thrown in my path, despite every person who had told me I was not good enough or smart enough or connected enough, I had done it. I had won. But the sweetest part was yet to come. 3 weeks later, I was walking through the lobby of the Morrison building, heading to my first day of work in my new position, when I saw a familiar figure slumped in one of the chairs near the elevator bank. It was Kiana. She looked nothing like the confident, entitled young woman I remembered. Her designer suit was wrinkled, her hair disheveled, her makeup smudged as if she had been crying. She was clutching a rejection letter in her hands, staring at it as if she could will the words to change through sheer force of desperation. When she saw me approaching, she looked up with eyes that were red-rimmed and hollow. For a moment, we just stared at each other. The winner and the loser. The one who had worked for everything and the one who had expected everything to be handed to her. Congratulations, she said finally, her voice cracked and broken. I heard you got the job. There was no malice in her words now. No condescension or superiority, just the raw pain of someone who had finally learned that the world did not owe her anything simply because of who her father was or how much money her family had. I looked down at her, literally and figuratively, and felt something I had not expected. Not satisfaction or triumph, but something closer to pity. Because while I had spent years building myself into something stronger, she had spent those same years assuming her advantages would always be enough. And now, faced with real competition for the first time in her privileged life, she had crumbled like a house of cards in a hurricane. Thank you, I said quietly. I worked very hard for it. The emphasis on worked was subtle but unmistakable. She heard it, and her face crumpled as if I had slapped her. I guess it all worked out for you in the end, she whispered. I stood there looking at her for a long moment. This broken shell of the girl who had once told me I was not meant for greatness. And I realized that my victory was not just about getting the job or proving her wrong. It was about something much more fundamental. She had taken my college scholarship all those years ago, using Daddy's money and family connections to steal an opportunity that should have been mine. She had looked me in the eye and told me I was not good enough, not worthy, not meant for the same level of success she took for granted. But in the end, she had done me a favor. Every cruel word, every dismissive glance, every reminder of my place in her imagined hierarchy, had forged me into something she could never be. Someone who had earned their place through merit, determination, and an unbreakable will to succeed. No, Kiana, I said, my voice steady and clear. I did not just get lucky or have things work out. I worked for this. I earned this. I deserve this. That is the difference between us. I turned and walked toward the elevators, my head held high, my steps confident and sure. Behind me, I heard the soft sound of her crying, But I did not look back. There was nothing behind me anymore except the past, and I had no interest in revisiting a time when I was powerless and small. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside. As they closed, I caught one last glimpse of Kiana sitting in that chair, clutching her rejection letter like the remnants of a dream that had never really been hers to begin with. She had taken my college scholarship, but in the end I had taken her dream job. And as I rose toward my new office, my new life, my new future built on a foundation of genuine achievement rather than inherited privilege, I realized that nothing, absolutely nothing, had ever felt sweeter than this moment of perfect earned justice. The girl who had once told me I was not meant for greatness was still sitting in that lobby chair, broken and defeated, while I, the girl she had dismissed and discounted, was rising to heights she would never reach. Sometimes the universe does not give us what we want when we want it. Sometimes it has to break us down completely before it can build us up into who we are truly meant to be. And sometimes the cruelest twist of fate turns out to be the greatest gift we never knew we needed. Kiana Blackwell had taught me that the world was not fair, that privilege and connections could steal opportunities from the deserving. But she had also taught me something far more valuable, that when you have nothing left to lose, you become unstoppable. She took my scholarship. I took her future. And I would do it again in a heartbeat. Because this is what real victory looks like. Not just winning, but winning through merit. Not just succeeding, but succeeding despite every obstacle thrown in your path. Not just reaching your dreams, but reaching them while the person who tried to crush those dreams watches from the sidelines. Finally understanding that talent and determination will always triumph over entitlement and privilege. I had become everything she said I could never be. And she had become everything she swore she would never become. Irrelevant. The elevator reached my floor, and the doors opened to reveal my new world. A world where I belonged not because of who my father was or how much money my family had, but because I had earned my place through blood, sweat, tears, and an unshakable belief that merit matters more than money. I stepped out of that elevator as Senior Associate Lyra Bennett of Morrison, Hayes and Associates. And I never looked back. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories of triumph, revenge, and justice served. Hit that notification bell, so you never miss a tale of ordinary people achieving extraordinary victories against impossible odds. Your support means everything to us.